Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope that you guys have all had a good year. It's Christmas time again already, can you guys believe that? And that means that I have a new DIY Christmas cards video for you. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make these three very simple, elegant, and also one very cute design right here. I like to keep all of my DIY card videos simple enough that anybody can really do them. So if you'd like to check out more of my DIY cards, I'll leave those linked up in the video cards just up here in the corner and also down in the description of the video for you guys. So before we move on to making these three designs right here, I just wanted to remind you guys that if you do like this video, make sure to click the thumbs up button just below the video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for all of my latest videos. Once you subscribe, make sure that you do click the little bell icon so that you will get notifications about my channel. So now, let's get started on these three DIY Christmas card designs right here. Alright, so for this very first design, as you can see, hopefully, I have some lines very lightly drawn. First line is about 1.25 inches up from the bottom, and then every other side I have a 1/2 inch pencil line all the way around. That's because I don't want my design to go outside of that area. Aside from that, I just have some lines drawn out. I did plan on doing 5 trees on this one, but as you'll see, the way it worked out, I only ended up doing 3, and then also left a wider margin at the bottom because that's where I'm going to write my greeting. For this particular design, you're going to need some water, and instead of having clean water, I have it slightly tinted because we're going to be drawing with our water to start out, and we want to be able to see where we lay it down, just very slightly. And then I'm using this very small brush. This is not a watercolor brush. A lot of times when I do watercolor work, I like a stiffer brush. So this is just an all-purpose brush, and it's a very small pointed one. So just look for something similar, and if you're wondering, this one here is a size 4. Okay, so the first thing I'm doing is I'm taking that small brush and I'm loading it up with lots of water. As you can see, it's dripping off the brush, and you can't see me doing that here just because I can't fit everything I'm using in the screen. So when you see me put my brush up there, I'm just getting more water. So the first thing you want to do is just draw a straight line down in the center, down to that 1.25 inch from the bottom mark that I mentioned. And then I'm just making a design that looks like a Christmas tree with just the plain water. And that's the reason why I wanted it to be slightly tinted. That way you can just kind of make out where your water is being put. So you're not filling it in too much, and it does look like branches. I know it's hard for you to see here because it is fairly clean water, but you'll see once we add color, which I'm going to do now. And I've just made this color using black and a little bit of that deep green. And if you want to know what kind of watercolors I'm using here, doesn't really matter actually. You can use whatever you have. You can even use gouache paints, but if you want to know what I'm using, I'll leave everything I use in this video down in the description. So as you can see, I just loaded up my brush with color, and it is quite wet, and then I'm just going to drop that color by touching my brush into the clean water that I laid on the page. And then I'm just going to keep reloading my brush with lots of pigment and dropping it into those wet areas. And we want it to pool. You want that pigment to pool in some areas and then look a little more faint in other areas. This is the effect that we're going for. So if it looks splotchy, you're doing it right. And you might need to practice this a little bit. I do recommend doing a couple of practice trees before you get started. So then now I'm just cleaning off my brush, because I'm going to go and do 2 more trees on either side of this center one in the same way. Only thing that's going to be different is that I'm going to try to vary the design of the tree. So where you see that the tree that we just did, I had the branches kind of pointing in an upward direction. This time I'm going to do it a little bit differently, but I'm going to always start out with that center line of water first and then design the branches from there. So as I said, I'm just going to do 2 on either side, and notice that on this one I'm dragging the branches in a downward direction. So you can do as many trees as you'd like to fit on here. As I said, just vary the style and design of each tree, just for a little variety. So then, now that you've got as many trees as you'd like on your card, you're just gonna let this dry completely before you move on to doing the lettering. This is a very simple card design, but it looks really elegant, and that's why I love it. Okay, so now once the trees are dry, you're just going to wanna write your greeting. So I'm just going to lay out my design with pencil first. That way I can get it to look the way I want it to before I go in with my liner pen. And if you'd like a little help with doing some hand lettering, I do have videos on hand lettering, and in particular I'm using a technique called faux calligraphy or faux hand lettering, and I will link that video up in the cards as well as down in the description for you if you'd like some pointers on hand lettering. I like to use Micron pens or even Staedtler pens because they are archival quality, which means that they won't fade over time. But again, I'll leave all of the materials listed down in the description of this video for you guys. Once I've got my greeting inked on there with my liner pen, I'm just going to let the ink soak in and fully dry before I erase my pencil lines. Since you worked so hard on it, you really don't want the eraser to smear your ink around. That just is very frustrating. And then I just go back and darken the thin parts of my lettering just a little bit. And that's it for this card design. Very simple, easy, elegant, and I'm sure any one of you guys can do it yourself. So let's move on to the next design. So for this next design, once again, I've laid out 1/2 inch margins all the way around my card area. And I'm also going to make sure that I'm trying to leave about 2 inches up from that 1/2 inch line as well. And that's going to be the space where I'm going to write my greeting. So for this next design, you're going to need something that you can trace in the shape of a circle. I've got this stencil, so that's what I'm going to use. And just find something that's about 2 inches wide. So just trace my circle with a pencil, and then I'm going to take my liner pen and I'm going to draw 3 curves along that circle, evenly spaced apart, with a small gap between each curve. Then I'm just going to draw arcing lines out from there, gradually getting shorter as I move up that curve. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So what you're aiming for is a very stylized looking Christmas tree bough. And I'm going to do that to each one of these curves. And then the next step, in between each one of those gaps we left between the boughs, I'm going to draw circles of varying sizes, and I like to draw them in odd numbers just because odd numbers are a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, but you can draw as many or as little as you like. Then once I got it all laid out, I'm really just going back here and thickening up those lines just very slightly, just so that they're a little bit more visible. And we're going to keep it very simple on this one with the lettering, but if you'd like, you can change it up and put whatever style lettering you desire. So once again, I'm just laying it out with my pencil. So then before tracing my letters with my pen, I'm going to add some color to the wreath part so that I don't smear my ink on my lettering. So just very simple on this one, I'm using dark green for the needles on the tree boughs, and then I am going up the branch part of the bough with a little bit of brown, And then I'm filling in the berries with a nice Christmassy red color. I'm mixing a little bit of this cool red with the orange just to get it a much brighter, punchier red. And then I'm just going to let that wet paint dry before I move on to finishing up the lettering with my pen. And now that I've erased those pencil lines, I'm just going to go over my lettering once again just to darken it up to add a little bit more impact. And that's it for this second really simple and beautiful design. Okay, now for this last design, we're getting a little more complicated. I'm not sure if you noticed, but I started very simple and worked my way up to the more complicated design, and it's still very simple and very easy to do. So again, the first thing I want to do is just kind of lay out some lines so that I'm leaving space on the bottom part of the card for writing my greeting. So as I start figuring out this design, I'm just drawing in a few little guidelines to help me get my illustration in the right spot. So we want to try to keep this centered, and we're going to draw a few ellipses. And you'll see how this design works out in the end, and you'll be able to position it on your card properly once you see me do it. But I'm going to draw 2 ellipses slightly separated, and then I'm going to leave a nice space, and then I'm going to draw another ellipse lower down. And that one is going to sit at that 2-inch mark from the bottom of my card. Now once I have all 3 of those drawn, I'm going to connect the very top and bottom ellipse with 2 vertical lines on either side. And I want to kind of curve that line towards the top where it meets the ellipse. I don't want to just draw straight down. So then from here, I am adding a couple of more guidelines, and I'm just dividing that space on either side of this cylinder in half and just making a little mark. Then I'm going to add an arc, like a rainbow shape on the side of this cylinder. And then I'm going to draw another smaller one just inside of that. Then on the other side, I'm going to draw another ellipse, but I'm going to do a half ellipse, and this is going to create a shadow effect for this. Now you can tell that it's a mug. And it's a mug of hot chocolate actually, so we need to draw in our marshmallows. So I'm just going to draw a few marshmallows, and I'm just drawing half the marshmallow because the other half of the marshmallow, of course, is down into the hot chocolate liquid itself. And then I'm just adding some squiggly lines to create some reflection on top of the surface of the liquid. And now I'm just going to trace my design with my liner pen. The only lines I'm not going to trace with my liner pen are the lines on the ellipses that you wouldn't see because they're on the other side of the mug. And I'm not going to trace my shadow because I want that to have a soft edge, not a hard edge. So we're just going to fill that in with our paint. And you'll see what I mean as we go. If you like, you can also add a little design to your hot chocolate mug. You don't have to. It looks just as cute without it, and I'll show you one that I did when I was coming up with these designs, and it looks just as cute without the design, but I thought I would add the design in, just add a little bit of color, a little bit of red for Christmas. So now the last thing that I want to lay out is a little bit of steam rising from that hot chocolate. So, because how are you supposed to know that it's hot chocolate unless it has steam? So I'm just going to do a little curl with a swirl on top. And then again, trace that with my liner pen. Once it's dry, I will erase all my pencil marks so that we can move on to paint. And then you can just kind of paint this in with whatever kind of colors you like, really, or you can follow along with what I do here. So there's not really much instruction to give for the painting part, so I'm just going to let you guys watch, and then I'll come back with a little help on the shadow part. Alright, so for this shadow part, I'm using just black paint with some water. And you want your shadow to be dark next to the mug and gradually lighten up as you move away from the mug. So I'm adding more water as I go and as I paint farther away from that mug. And then if it needs a little bit more darkening next to the mug again, I'll just add a little bit more black. All right, so I'm going to continue on painting the rest of this mug of hot chocolate. And also another thing you want to be careful for, here you can see I've only painted the mug so far, and I've let that dry before I went and painted the shadow, because if you don't, your paint will just migrate into the wet areas. So just a note, I am letting it dry in between moving on to painting wet areas that touch. For these marshmallows, I painted them a very light color, similar to the hot chocolate, with a lot of water, and then I'm just drying my brush off with a paper towel and then allowing my paintbrush to soak up a little bit of that pigment, because I really want the color on these marshmallows to be very subtle, barely there at all. Alright, so now I've got that mug of hot chocolate painted, and I'm just going to let it dry completely before I start my lettering. Okay, so now it's all dry and I can move on to my lettering, and once again I'm going to lay my letters out with pencil first, and I'm going to do a similar style to the one that I did on the first card in this tutorial, but with just a different greeting. And this one's a little cute and clever because it's a warm cup of hot chocolate, and the greeting will be warmest wishes. With the other two designs, you could really put any greeting that you like to. On this one, I think this is a really cute greeting to go along with the illustration. Alright, so with all three of those designs completed, it's time to just peel off the tape, trim the cards, and fold them. I just wanted to quickly note that before I even started painting these designs, when I laid out the size, I pre-scored all the center lines so that once I cut them out, that step was already completed. And I used my bone folder and a ruler to make those score lines, but if you don't have a bone folder, you can use many other things like a credit card or anything like that to make your score lines. And that's it. 3 very simple and elegant Christmas card designs for you this year. Alright, that's it for this year's DIY Christmas card video tutorial. I hope that you guys all have a really Merry Christmas and a really great New Year, and I hope that 2022 treats you well. Veda just wanted to say hi. You guys haven't seen her in a video for a while. I think probably since she was 3 months old, and she's going to be 5 tomorrow. So that's quite a while. So she just wanted to wish you guys a Merry Christmas as well. And lastly, I hope you guys all have a super awesome day, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!